Okay, everybody, we're about ready to start, and I'm doing an audio check now. So if you can tell me if you're getting the audio okay. Okay, well, there should be. Okay, so tell me if there's a sound. The sound is okay? That's all right? All right, good. So we have the sound. Good. All right. We're about to start. Ready? Ready, set, go, everybody. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Farsight Intelligence Briefing for November 2021, where we talk about the only war that matters. Now, I've been looking at the comments that have been going on during this live stream, and it's reflecting everything I'm seeing elsewhere. So I want to preface this by saying, what I'm about to tell you is really, really, really important. You've really got to get it. You've got to understand it. What I'm seeing in the comments and what I'm hearing all over the news is all about Donald Trump, Joe Biden, the 2020 election being stolen, yes or no, and the vaccine. Yes vaccine, no vaccine. That's all I'm seeing. Let me just say this one thing. Can we please take that entire dialogue about the 2020 election, about Trump, about Biden, about the vaccine, and just put it aside for an hour while I talk to you? There is a war going on, a real live shooting war. It's a real war that's going on, and it's being fought here on Earth primarily by proxies. That's humans that are doing the stuff. The goal has nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden. It has nothing to do with the vaccine. It has nothing to do with the 2020 election. Those things are being used to distract you. The goal is to get you to fight among yourselves, to get the anti-vaxxers to fight against the pro-vaxxers, to get the pro-Trumpers fight against the pro-Bidens, to get the 2020 election thing being stolen against the people who said it was fair. It's to fight, 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 so that you don't see what's really happening. There's a war. You are being channeled like sheep, like slaves, into a space where you don't see what's going on because you're so consumed with these other things. And what you have to understand is these other things are being manipulated by people you don't even see. That's what I want to talk to you about today. We also are having a little bit of a difference with our intelligence briefing. So all I'm going to be saying today is we're going to be starting a new form of intelligence briefing where there's a theme oriented. Now you saw that the graphic, the thumbnail for the intelligence briefing is different today, and it's going to be different every month. In addition, we're going to be taking these intelligence briefings. They always go up in the recorded, perfect edited version in farsightprime.com the next day. But we're going to be taking it down during YouTube at the end of this and then putting up a 5-minute clip of the beginning of this so that people can get a taste of what is in the intelligence briefing while they're in YouTube, just 5-6 minutes, and then they can go over to farsightprime.com to see the rest of it if they want. So this is really important. I just want you to say it's okay to be anti-vax. It's okay to be pro-vax. It's okay to be pro-Trump. It's okay to be anti-Trump. It's okay to be pro-Biden. It's okay to be anti-Biden. It's okay to think the 2020 election was stolen. It's okay to think that it was not stolen. It doesn't matter. All I'm asking is please take that entire baggage of argumentation that we have got among ourselves and put it aside for 1 hour. Only 1 hour. If you want to continue to argue over that stuff after the hour, that's fine. But for 1 hour, let's talk about something different. Something that's really going on. Something that is really, really, really going on. And you have to be able to see it in order to see how you are being manipulated. How you are being manipulated like sheep, like slaves, people that are being controlled. And as long as you don't see what's really happening, they've got you. And as soon as the current problems go away or resolved, something else is going to come out in order to constantly keep you in a state of turmoil. So please just listen. Please listen for just 1 hour. Let me explain the war that's going on. Now, let's begin with the extraterrestrials. That's where this whole war is focused on. You have to understand how big this issue is. The idea of there being extraterrestrials should not be in question by anybody. The whole US government is all broken up into factions, arguing they're actually aligned with different extraterrestrial groups. Now I'll explain the whole thing. But the idea that ETs are there should not be in question. There is two basic alignments of the extraterrestrials that I'll be explaining. Now, the first is what we call the Orion and the Reptilian. It's an alliance, but it's an uneasy alliance. They're sometimes competitors, but for right now on Earth, they're an alliance. And those are very repressive species. They're the ones that are organizing all of the fighting that you're getting yourselves into. Now, there's another side that is organized, that is basically, we call them the Galactic Federation of Worlds. That's another side. They've got their own rules, and they're really strict rules. Militarily, around Earth, the Galactic Federation of Worlds is militarily superior, but they have a whole bunch of rules, and I'll explain it. Just let me, I'm sort of summarizing things now so I can get to the details later. They could actually beat the Reptilians and the Orion combined forces on Earth. They could do it. The trouble is, Earth would be a wasteland after that. If they fight into open combat, then the Reptilians and the Orions will come out and they'll just battle everybody, and Earth will be a cinder. It won't be a place we can live any longer. So the problem is, how do you fight this war on the planet when you can't have open conflict like that? That's what's going on. Now let me explain. Take a look at this very brief video. The US Navy is responsible for this video, and it's primarily responsible for the entire collection of 140 unexplained UFO cases that they reported to Congress in Air Force, Area 51, that type of thing. They're actually working closely with and aligned with the Reptilians and the Orion group. I'll explain all of this in more detail as the intelligence briefing goes on. But take a look at this video real quick.
Dude, that is a fucking drone, bro. There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. Oh, got it! Woohoo!
Okay. Okay, so that was brief. Now, listen. That was put out by the United States Navy. Now, the United States Navy seems to be as active as they possibly can at getting this information out. They have got the US government, the whole government, to at least say that the UFOs, which they're now calling unidentified aerial phenomena, that they're real, that they're technological, that they're aircraft, and they're also saying that they are not made, they use a level of technology that we do not have, and they are not made by the US, China, or Russia. After that, they're not saying anything, and they say they have no evidence of extraterrestrial whatever, but the point is, they're at least leaving it up to making that part of it ambiguous. If it cannot be craft from the United States, China, or Russia, and they are absolutely correct, and they're stating point blank that they're crafts, they're vehicles, and they're flighting. And if you listen to the pilots, the pilot was saying there was an entire fleet of them. They have tens of thousands of reports. They released 140 of them because of Congress asking them to do that. But the point is, if even one of them is correct, and if you eliminate the US, China, and Russia, then obviously where are these things coming from? They're obviously extraterrestrial, and the military is not authorized to go to that last step. But they've eliminated all other possibilities. Now, again, there are tens of thousands of reports, and we have actually shown a number of videos here that we've done remote viewing projects on, and they're unambiguous. Now, the whole issue here is, if you start with the idea that the extraterrestrials do exist, then you can clearly see that there's a huge effort to suppress that information. Now, the real question you then have to ask is, why? Why is there an effort to suppress the information? The whole idea that We just don't want to rattle humanity. It's a little bit too much for us. We don't know if we can take it. Just drop that. That has nothing to do with anything. The reality is there's a war going on, and there's a reason why the secrecy has to be maintained. Okay, now we're going to go into the details so I can explain it. So, first of all, the U.S. Air Force, Area 51, they clearly seem to be aligned towards one side. The Navy clearly seems to be aligned towards another side. Now, if you look at Farsight projects indicate a lot of overt extraterrestrial control over humanity going back thousands of years. And in terms of Earth more generally, millions of years. We even did the project on the destruction of the dinosaurs. There's been extraterrestrial involvement in this planet going back to the very beginning. So our current civilization, over thousands of years, there's been tremendous extraterrestrial manipulation and control that's going on. Now, starting with the destruction of Maldek and Mars. Maldek was the planet that was between Mars and Jupiter that is now the asteroid belt. The mainstream astronomical society is not even willing to admit it was a planet. But listen, folks, that's part of the manipulation. The manipulation is micromanaged even to the level of scientists. Listen, you have the asteroid series, you have all the other asteroids. Those rocks, according to the mainstream, just came out of the primordial solar nebula. Listen, folks, that's impossible. You cannot get dust to form a rock. The primordial solar nebula was just dust. In order to form a rock, you need a huge gravity source that pulls all the dust together, compresses it, and makes it into a rock. The asteroid belt was a planet, and we call it Maldek. It was inhabited, and Mars was inhabited. And if you look at our projects, there was a war between Maldek and Mars. Maldek was primarily inhabited by reptilians, and Mars was primarily inhabited by humanoid types. And there was a struggle. And the struggle ended up with Maldek being blown up, which sort of ended that reptilian influence, but it also destroyed Mars. If you look at Mars, one half of Mars is covered with craters, and the other half is basically crater-free. It was obvious that the planet blew up on near one side of Mars, smashed it with rocks, and that was sort of the end, the beginning of the total end of Mars as a livable place. It actually does have a lot of people still there, a lot of beings still there, but everybody's underground. Extraterrestrials don't mind not having a good atmosphere. They have tremendous burrowing capabilities. All sides have tremendous abilities to produce bases and things underneath the surface. So if you don't see a livable atmosphere on Mars or any planet, just don't worry about that. Extraterrestrials typically bury themselves inside. Probably a great reason for this is defensive. It's hard to actually attack people that are buried deep inside a planet. So extraterrestrials have been around in that planetary conflict, and if you think of it, the destruction of the entire planet, Maldek, and that type of struggle, that didn't happen because of local stuff that's going on here in the solar system, local stuff on Mars happening and local stuff on Maldek. Obviously, that conflict is a spillover from something that's much larger going on in the galaxy. And so when we talk about the conflict between Mars and Maldek, we're talking about something that's actually happening out there, and it finally got here, and they had some local battles. Okay, now the weaponry involved in the destruction of a planet, Maldek, that just didn't come from nowhere. That kind of level of technology, and that kind of technology, even to get here with spaceships, is obviously very advanced stuff, and you don't get that advanced just from one planet. It takes a galactic civilization and a lot of interexchange of technology and resources and experimentation and research to produce that type of a thing. And even when you saw that Tic Tac video that came out of the US Navy, the pilots were saying it was a whole fleet that they were looking at. You don't get a fleet from just somebody having a base in Area 51. You have a fleet from some planetary civilization that has lots and lots of technological resources. So, all right, so we've got to that point. Now, the current evidence seems to suggest, and again, I'm drawing from a huge number of Farsight projects, so I hope you're watching the Farsight projects, because that's where I'm drawing all this information from. The current evidence seems to suggest that there is a standoff between two opposed extraterrestrial groups. Again, it's the Orion and the Reptilian versus the Galactic Federation of Worlds. That's why we're still living here. That's why Earth isn't a cinder, just a total burnt crisp crust. This place is being preserved because there's a standoff. Now, the best we can figure out is that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is militarily superior in this solar system. They've put a ton of resources into this solar system. Again, I'm not going to go into trying to detail all of the stuff that we've gotten that's buried in so many projects. This is an intelligence briefing where I'm pulling things from all types of projects to make conclusions. However, the Galactic Federation of Worlds, again, coming from our projects, is not militarily strong enough to defeat the Reptilians and the Orions in the galaxy-wide. They're strong enough to beat them here in the solar system, but in terms of the entire galaxy, if they were to go one-on-one with the Orions and the Reptilians, they would lose. So they're not that strong. But they are strong enough in terms of the tremendous amount of resources that they put into the solar system to be able to beat them here. But if they do that, there will be open conflict, and then Earth will be just a burnt crisp. Just a crust. There'll be nothing left on here. It will be a cinder. Okay. So the level of massing of the resources that has been going on in this solar system indicates that the conflict has got much wider roots. Friends, just listen. I know that you think you're important. I think I'm important. We all think we're important. But give me a break. We're on a small planet in the periphery of a large galaxy. We're like a dot way out there. It's just one planet of a whole galaxy filled with life. If the Galactic Federation of Worlds is throwing the kitchen sink into this solar system in order to stop the Reptilians and the Orions from taking overt control over things, you have to say, why are they doing that? They need those resources elsewhere to defend them themselves. Remember, they cannot withstand, they would not win in a one-to-one battle throughout the whole galaxy with the Reptilians and the Orions on one side and the Galactic Federation of the Worlds on another. They would not win. So why are they putting so much of their resources here into the solar system? There is only one conclusion. There's only one conclusion that can be made. In the future, something terrible has the potential of happening. Something terrible, like a Holocaust version 2.0 for the galaxy. Remember, we've already determined that long ago in this galaxy, over like 1 million years, there was already a Holocaust, but it looks like there's the possibility of a new version, a new Holocaust, a galactic-wide level of death and destruction that is just about unimaginable. And it appears from what we can gather that if you trace back where it all starts from, it's here. Otherwise, these resources would not be piled in here. These resources would not be here if it was just us they were fighting over. If it was just us, they wouldn't put all those resources here. Something bigger is at stake. And the only thing is, since the Galactic Federation of Worlds cannot win against a combined attack with the Orions and the Reptilians in a galaxy-wide thing, something bad must happen in the future that's worse than anything they can imagine. And they had to trace it back, and here is where it starts. The point is, based on our own research, this type of thing, this type of struggle indicates that this is humanity on a cusp. We're on the cutting edge. We're on the cusp of something happening. We're either going to go one way or the other. If we become a slave race to the Reptilians and the Orions, it looks like whatever happens in the future largely involves us. And if we don't become a slave race, if we actually align ourselves with the Galactic Federation of Worlds, if that Orion and Reptilian element is cut off, snapped in the bud, taken away, then that horrible future doesn't happen. So It's either you confront that horrible future in the future when it's already manifest, and then it would be like what it's like here, where the Galactic Federation of Worlds can't win against something that's so big and so massive. You have to trace it back to when it's smaller. And here apparently is it. So if you ever thought, man, that humanity has a destiny, all the evidence is pointing that humanity has a huge destiny. And it can go in either direction. We can either be the seed of galactic destruction, or we can be the seed of something better, much better. But it starts here. Whenever you have something big happening, you go back in time until you find out where it starts. And then if you can change things, then you can save things in the future. All right, now you have to understand, of course, we're talking about time travel, but that's what we do, for heaven's sakes. We're in the remote viewing business. We're not limited by the thinking, the antediluvian thinking of mainstream science that says time travel and also traveling mentally through time is impossible. You have to understand that when we transfer information across time and space, if you just look at our human news program, where we predict stuff that's happening a month in advance, if you look at our economic forecasts, which have been excellent, and we predict what's been going on economically with, say, the SP 500, if we forecast even one thing correctly, or even look at an explanation of something that we remote view that happened in the past, even one thing, we have transferred information from time, future to the present, or past to the future. And as far as physicists are concerned, if you transfer information, information is something real. It's not just something you think about. Information is something real. It's solid. It's the same as transferring energy or matter. You see, they've done experiments. This is not in dispute. Just listen to me. In an entirely sealed system that is not having any influence from the outside world, if you have something organized inside, and that organization of something just, goes through entropy, it just sort of breaks apart. The organization of whatever there breaks apart. Energy is released. Do you get that? Energy is released. That means that when information is something that we just think is something that people just think about, but organization of something is the level of information. When that is transferred, when that is broken down, or just the information itself, energy is released. That tells you that information is energy in some form, and energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. Energy equals mass. So that when we're doing remote viewing, we are transferring energy, mass, across time and space. And mainstream physicists say that's impossible. So just don't listen to them. They're not up to speed yet. They haven't gotten the memo. It will get there one day. But part of the reason they're not getting it is because of this manipulation that's been going on. A huge amount of resources is being invested in holding back the reins of what people can think about. I'm going to be going over a lot of how this is being done in a bit, but let me just proceed. The level of extraterrestrial involvement here suggests that something big is at stake, really big. Now, it's challenging, but it can be done. It's what I do. I pull information from all our projects to do this. But and I'm not gonna endorse anybody, or I'm not recommending anybody. I'm just stating, there is somebody out there who does, it's not actually channeling, because she gets actual information that she says she gets directly from the Galactic Federation of Worlds. And that's Elena Danaan. She has a new book out called We Will Never Let You Down. So this is the new book out. Again, I'm not endorsing or supporting. I'm just saying that our information that we get remarkably does correspond with what she writes about. Now, the one thing I do, and some people may find her presentation in that book to be an easier way to sort of organize things and going through all of our projects, but our projects are where we go out and get the information ourselves, so we trust our own projects. I don't have any way to know whether Elena Danaan's stuff is real or not. I'm just saying that it really corresponds with what we're finding remarkably. And Where it differs is usually in places where she's just talking about her own thoughts. But when she talks about things where she's being told stuff, it does match. And it's really hard for me to imagine how so much detail can be brought together without knowing stuff. And so one of the things that she does in this particular book is she talks about real physical contact she's had with members of the Galactic Federation of Worlds that are organized or based around Earth, that are involved in the actual war. And you can actually say, well, why would that happen? Why would they have picked her? Why would they have done something like that? Well, there is a reason for that. So the reason is actually very understandable. If she is in fact going through these experiences, there is a reason why it would happen. The Galactic Federation of Worlds, from our own projects, we've been able to see that they really do have a rule of non-interference. And that is, they do not want to interfere with a developing society, because if they interfere with the developing society, they stop that society from actually manifesting its own growth, for actually doing something. So it's not a matter of just coming in and rescuing us, because then we'd have the same problems in our minds. We would never have resolved those problems, and we'd have to go somewhere else in some other life, in some other planet, and just go through the same stuff over again. So we have to go through that developmental process. And so they have a really strict rule, no direct interference. But this is the key. No direct interference is allowed, and they are militarily strong enough in this solar system to enforce that, even with the Orions and the Reptilians. So the Orions and the Reptilians understand that no direct anything can be done. And the Galactic Federation has this really strong rule for themselves, no direct anything that can be done. But this is the key. This is the loophole. You see, if any extraterrestrial group can get humans to do it, do you hear what I just said? If any extraterrestrial group can get humans to do what the extraterrestrials want, there's nothing the Galactic Federation of Worlds will do, because that's not interfering. So if the Orions and the Reptilians can get humans to do what they want them to do, then it's okay. If the Galactic Federation of Worlds can get humans to do what they want them to do, that is okay. It's because of this rule that the Galactic Federation of Worlds has that the Orions and the Reptilians are being held back. That's why there's a standoff, because the Orions and Reptilians cannot beat the Galactic Federation of Worlds in the solar system. Galaxy-wise they could, but not in the solar system. So they have to manipulate or utilize that rule that they know the Galactic Federation of Worlds follows. No interference. But if the humans do it, it's okay. So the Reptilians and the Orions have spent an enormous amount of time, energy, resources, the whole kitchen sink you can imagine, influencing various humans on Earth. That is why our projects such as, where we look at, when we look at, big people, and we go into their minds, and we find, in fact, they're being manipulated mentally. That is why we study so much how this manipulation actually happens. It happens through a whole bunch of ways. You see, the US military, lots of it, not all of it, is really fixated on having weapons. And a lot of the military industrial complex is really focused on that. And if you look at our remote viewing project on Area 51, for example, it's all stuff about science stuff. Underneath Area 51 is a zillion layers of tunnels. And in the beginning, you get humans working on ET crafts, trying to reverse engineer stuff, things like that, until you get farther down below, and that's where you find a large organization of reptilians. And so, in the issue of who's doing that, it's clearly underneath Area 51 is a huge base of reptilians. They are obviously influencing that section of the US military that controls Area 51. They also have to understand that certain intelligence areas are being controlled, manipulated by reptilians and Orions, because they have something that they can pawn off. They can say, we will help you technologically. You have to do it, but we'll help you we'll show you sort of how things work. And they give them stuff, and they say, but you have to do it yourself. Okay? And then when they want to really control something here on Earth, They have somebody else do it. So they won't assassinate a major leader, but they'll have some humans do it. And they'll just sort of say, this could be done, but that leader's got to go. So the point is that the manipulation is done such that humans do their own stuff. Now, right now, this goes back to the beginning when I talked about, remember when I talked about how we're all fighting, the pro-vaxxers are against the anti-vaxxers, the pro-Trump are against the pro-Biden, back and forth. The 2020 election was stolen, no, it was not stolen, all that fighting. Those are all humans doing that. The question is, why do you think the polarized efforts are so strong? Why do you think it's just reasonable that people just fight like that? Why do you think everything is so focused so that nobody is talking about anything else? If you think that's just the way humans are, you're nuts. That's not the way humans are. This is all being manipulated, and it's all of it. And all you need to do is get human leadership to do that, various human leadership. And if you get them to work in such a way that they're combating, then you're not going to see anything. This is what magicians do. If magicians are on a stage, they'll distract you with one hand while they're doing something with the other. That's an old trick, and that's what they're really good at. Now, going back to Elena Danaan, and I'm not saying now that I know anything about her in real life, but the reality is, if the Galactic Federation of Worlds wanted to get the information that she's talking about to us, that's one reasonable thing to do. Give it to somebody else, but then let her do the publishing. Let her publish it. Do you get the idea? She has to do it because she's a human. They can't do it. They have to have non-interference, but they can talk. Just like the reptilians and the Orions, they can talk. They can offer help, they can offer things, but they can't do anything directly. Otherwise, they would violate the Galactic Federation of Worlds rule of non-interference, and then the Galactic Federation of Worlds could bash them. Do you get the idea? So to avoid military conflict is something that the Orion and the reptilians want. They want to avoid military conflict because in a one-to-one battle they would lose, but Earth would be destroyed. The Galactic Federation of Worlds has an interest in solving this thing that's going to happen in the far future, so they don't want Earth to be destroyed either. So this whole thing boils down to how do you get humans to do things? So everything is being done through proxies. Everything is being done through proxies. And the highest level of importance is to make it so that you don't see it. So that you don't see what's actually happening. Because if you see what's actually happening, then you'd say, well, heck, I'm not going to fight this thing. Those guys are the ones that are causing the problem. So the idea of Elena Danaan actually having these meetings with these extraterrestrials and getting this information directly, it's plausible. It could actually be happening. Otherwise, she's just incredibly clever in putting dots together. But it's such a complicated network of stuff that she's pulling together and that we have individually found out in our own projects. It's plausible that she's actually having these contacts. It's not as extensive as the manipulative contacts that's going on with the Orion and the reptilian groups in humanity. They've compromised a whole bunch of people. We even did a project, Human Leadership Has Been Compromised, where we went after the popes and we actually saw the manipulation was going on. So the point is that the Elena Danaan stuff may be sort of small scale, but it's very plausible and it is allowed. All right, so this gets to another point. The principle of non-interference and why all ETs, because of this rule of the Galactic Federation, if the Galactic Federation of Worlds wasn't here, then the Orions and the reptilians, they could do anything they want. And they wouldn't mind at all doing things overtly. But because of this rule of non-interference, we're in a situation now where we're having to say, well, okay, who's doing what? If the Orions and the reptilians are working with certain segments of the U.S. military, and it does, I have no direct knowledge, but it does appear that since Area 51 has the reptilians underneath it, it does appear that that group, and that would probably include the U.S. Air Force, is got some cooperative arrangement with the reptilians and the Orions. And it does appear that the U.S. Navy, because they're pushing the disclosure agenda so strongly, including releasing films, it does appear that they're more aligned to the Galactic Federation of Worlds. that means that there must be meetings going on. At some level, members of the US Navy are probably having interactions with the Galactic Federation of World Representatives, and at some level, well, obviously under Area 51, it's got to be happening, but at some level, the US Air Force, perhaps the CIA, and whoever was running Area 51, they're probably having open interactions with some members of the Orion and or the reptilian groups. So now we're coming to a major point. What about Farsight? Hey, I run Farsight, right? Well, actually, I don't run it. I'm the CEO in charge of Farsight, the director. But the reality is we've got so many talented people. Sometimes I just look around and say, hey, what should we do, folks? So I question whether I run anything or everybody else is running everything. But Farsight is entirely human. Listen to these words. I am not an extraterrestrial. I was born of a human mother and a human father on this planet. Genetically, I am human. Everybody else on Farsight, same thing, okay? So we're human. So we're allowed to do whatever we want. So the real question you should be asking is, our publication of our remote viewing studies is being allowed. Now, I know this for a fact. I'm not going to tell you why I know it for a fact, but normally, any groups that study in a serious way UFO or ET stuff are disrupted, and that's been going back ever since 1970s and 80s and 90s. They're disrupted, and typically what happens is intel agencies have people get involved in these groups, and then those people cause discord, to cause trouble in the groups, and then people in the groups just say this is too much of a mess, and they walk away, and the groups collapse. So the basic idea is they're always being disrupted. Well, Farsight, at least so far, we're not being disrupted. So everybody should be asking, somebody's got to be helping us, because all the other major groups are being disrupted, and they have been disrupted going back into the 70s and 60s and 80s and so on like that. So you have to be asking, if we're not being disrupted, then there's got to be someone, humans, that are helping in some way, keeping us alive. And then the other question then is, well then, which ET faction is asking for this to happen? So which ET faction is supportive of Farsight's activities? It's hard to believe that the Orion and the reptilian groups would be wanting Farsight to do what it does. That's very hard to believe. So it's much more likely that the Galactic Federation of Worlds likes what we're doing. And we're another way of getting this information through. Now, we don't have situations where people are, taking us up to the ET ships. Everything that we get is from our own projects. We train as remote viewers. We go out as a group, and they get their information and they bring it back and we present it. But we've been able to put this together in a very major way. We're becoming a very significant information source. The level of our presentational technologies is extremely high. Our capabilities are extremely high in terms of what we can do with remote viewing. It goes way past the stuff that historically has been done in the old military remote viewing circle stuff. We're being allowed to go full blast and to experiment with new ideas, new technologies. We have the money to actually buy good camera equipment. We have the money to have a studio. We have the money to expand, to train. Somebody seems to be helping. I'm not saying I know exactly who's helping, but we're not being disrupted as is typical of other groups. So what you should be asking is, there's always some ET faction involved in either disrupting a group or protecting a group. It's always, there's no exceptions. So the one thing you should be asking is really what's going on with Farsight's stuff. It's not just for you to say, oh, they're just creative people that are just putting stuff out on their streaming service, farsightprime.com, and on YouTube and stuff like that. If you're thinking that, it's nuts. we're being allowed to do this and to present stuff in interesting ways and to train people with methods that go way beyond what happened with the early military stuff. There's something big going on. And we ask this question a lot ourselves. Okay? So to survive as an effective voice, some ET group must be supporting it. And then through some humans, they must be protecting. That's how it's got to be done. Everything's got to be done through humans. So it cannot be that some ET group is directly affecting us and supporting us. They've got to be giving information to some human group, and that human group is doing it. Everything is being done through proxies. Everything is being done by humans. Okay. Why is this a war? This, clearly, from what we have seen, is a huge war. It involves the destruction of planets. It's Star Wars on steroids. And really what's happening here is so cloak and dagger, so behind the scenes, it's hard to imagine, because they've got the entire planet all locked up into a situation where the people can't see what's going on. And that's the key to the whole thing. And the Galactic Federation of Worlds has an interest in having some of this secrecy maintained. Let me explain why. It's obvious why the Orions and the Reptilians would want to have this information held back so that they can continue doing what they're doing. But the Galactic Federation of Worlds has an interest in that too. Please listen to what I'm about to say. There is something that we might just call on the level of frequency. People vibrate at a certain level. At a certain level, you might call a higher frequency level, things can't interact with things that have a lower frequency. This has to do with physics. It has to do with a principle all widely discussed as superposition. Basically, everything that exists as a waveform in some way, and that there are components of waves that build up everything, so that when you see this mouse, for example, this mouse has a wave function. It's composed of molecules, atoms, subatomic particles, and each one of those things have a wave function. And those things all combine into a larger wave function. Now, that wave function is totally understood in terms of frequencies. For something to interact with something else, the frequencies have to be sort of close. They can't be really far apart. If they're far apart, they just can't get to it. It's like oil and water. So humanity is in a spot where there are people on this planet that vibrate at a relatively high rate. And basically the Reptilians and the Orions, which vibrate at a much lower rate, can't get to them. They just simply can't get to them. Nothing can happen. And there are others that vibrate at a much lower rate, and the Reptilians and the Orions can get to them. One of the ways to tell what kind of rate that you're vibrating at is the kind of emotions that you have. Emotions that are driven by anger and fear and fighting, those are lower vibrations. Those are lower level frequencies. And those allow the Reptilians and the Orion groups to work with you, to keep you like sheep in a herd. That's why they want you to fight among yourselves. That's why when you look at the fear porn that comes out in all of the major networks, it doesn't matter which one, there's no good network or bad network. All of the major networks have this fear porn that comes out. That's what they want. They want you to say, oh no. And then they want you to say, oh, this was stolen. Oh, that was stolen. This is an attempt to control. Oh no, we have to fight this. We have to fight that. As long as you're thinking that way, your vibration is low. And then you're in a spot, a superposition spot you might call, that cannot be touched by people at a higher vibration. The only way to stop this is to raise the vibration of the people. So the Galactic Federation of Worlds actually has an interest in not just telling you everything that's going on. If you look at all of our projects, it's really, especially our ET News projects, it's really clear that the Orion and the reptilian ones they're doing some really terrible stuff. And that's just, from everything we see, it's just the tip of the iceberg. If you were to see everything that's going on, you would just go into a big state of depression. Your whole vibration would be lowered. So one of the things that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is trying to do is to rescue you, or actually help you rescue yourself, by getting your vibration higher. If you get your vibration higher, believe it or not, you just look at the reptilians and the Orions and say, what the blankety blank are you doing? This is crazy stuff. And you just walk away, and there's nothing they can do about it. Believe it or not, that's actually true. They just can't shoot you. They can't do, well, if you have a high enough vibration, they can't get at you. They can't manipulate your mind. And they would leave. Do you understand? The Orions and the reptilians, the underground bases, everything, they would go. But as long as they can get the fear porn into your mind, your vibration is at a certain level where they have access to you. And their idea is to keep you at a level where they have access to you, because then you're a real resource. You can be farmed out, you can be slaved out, you can be captured, you can be sent out, anything can happen to you, and they can do it because they've got you at a vibration that's that low. So the Galactic Federation of Worlds has an interest in not just sort of dumping all the information out onto you, because they don't want you to slide into a state of depression. They want to get you out. So they have to both get human intermediaries to get information to you as best as you can, but then to package that with the understanding that there's hope, that we can win this thing, that we can actually win the war. So yes, there is real life fighting going on. Shooting. Yes, there is a struggle. But the bottom line is, if humanity stays at this lower level of fighting vibration, there's nothing the Galactic Federation of Worlds can do, and the cause is lost. So for them to win, they both have to do some shooting, but at the same time, they have to get humanity's vibration to rise up. And to do that, they have to get the information out. So that's the struggle. So that's why we're doing stuff that we do at Farsight. Our goal is to get the information out. And if Elena Danaan is doing exactly what she says she's doing, and it's plausible, then that's part of her role as well, to get some of this information out. Now, again, I'm not endorsing her, and I'm not saying that everything that she says is correct. I have some differences, and I don't know which is correct, our version or hers, or in some of the things that she writes about. But in large part, the stuff that she writes about is so complicated, and it matches so closely to what we have. I have to consider the possibility that the Galactic Federation of Worlds is actually feeding her information directly, and then as a human, she's publishing it and helping to get that information out. So I have to consider that as a real thing. Okay, chaos. Other terrible stuff is happening on Earth and in the solar system. And it's in large part due to the disruptive influences of the Orion and the reptilian factions. Please listen to this sentence. Chaos is a method of control. As long as you can get a society to stay in a state of chaos, you've got them. You've got them. You've got them. So what we have is a situation where there's a lot of lying that's been going on. I was originally duped by a lot of this lying as well. Let me give you a personal story of something that I was duped in. In the very early days of my exploration, I was duped into believing some of the information I was hearing through some channeling resources that I thought was really interesting, because it had a lot of stuff that we later found out was absolutely true. But one of the things that they were selling was that the Greys, that this large group of Greys, there's no such thing as the Greys, as if there's one group. There's actually a very, very complex set of groups of Greys, but that the Greys had destroyed their planet through a bad bunch of environmental stuff, and that they wanted to rebuild their genetic structure, but they were afraid to rebuild it from their own past genes. So they wanted to use some human genes to produce a new race that they call the Essassani. And that they needed to do that, and they got permission by us on our level of soul before we were born here to do these abductions and so on. My current understanding of that now is that that is a total lie. None of it is true. That the Greys, in fact, came here because they're probably a slave race to the reptilians, and that they came here, and they probably have done this on countless other worlds, given the same exact story. Can you help us? You need to help us. And they offer technology and stuff like that in order to get the humans to sort of agree to let them do it. Because once they get a foothold, then they expand like gangbusters. And then the reptilians, who apparently run them, come in right afterwards. So they're like the Greys are like the opening act, then the reptilians sort of follow in. But they need to get the agreements from human leadership so that the Galactic Federation of the World doesn't stop them. Because if they don't get some type of agreement, then it's not humans that are doing it, allowing it to happen. Then it's the reptilians doing it directly, and that's not allowed. And then the Galactic Federation of Worlds can intervene. So one of the things that we have been doing is doing our public negotiations with extraterrestrials and saying those early agreements that were done are null and void. They weren't done, they were never made public, no one was told about them, so they cannot affect us. And that's what we really want other people to buy into. We want other people to say, yeah, those agreements don't affect us. We were never told about them. It was done in secrecy. The humans were duped. End of story. So, but what happens with the Greys and the Essassani, if they wanted to increase the gene pool for their own stuff, folks, just give me a break. There's a whole galaxy of life out there. There's genes they could have gotten from any place. They weren't struggling to get genes. There are genes everywhere. They came to this place because it was a prison planet, because it was being operated as a prison planet, because they had the potential to abduct millions of people and get genes from these people all in order to create something else. And they were interested in producing what looks like, from what we can see, slaves, genetic slaves that could be used on all types of stuff out there. They were not interested in creating an Essassani race that could actually, be their future, as if we are their parents and the Essassani race the whole thing is just a lie. It's just a plain lie. So I was duped into thinking all of that. There's nothing about them destroying their planet with ecological stuff and now wanting to come out again and want our help and begging for our help. That has nothing to do with anything. As far as we can see, that section of the Greys are a slave race to the reptilians, and that they are the front men that come in at first. The reptilians would scare the dickens out of anybody if they just showed up and said, we want to negotiate. So if they send in the Greys, they're little guys. They're humanoid in looking. They can negotiate. Stuff can happen, okay? And the Orion people, they look very human, so they can negotiate, stuff like that. But the reptilians, they work closely with the Greys. The Orions, they have an alliance now, but they're not close. They can often be at opposites. They can often be at odds with themselves. But anyway, I was duped into thinking that as well for the longest time. There's so much energy being pumped into manipulating humanity through all types of sources. And that's why I don't believe any of the stuff that comes out through channeling. I have to check every little thing. Now, a lot of the stuff that comes out through channeling is correct. I'm not saying it's not correct, and a lot of it actually seems quite enlightening, but that's the whole point, is to make it seem enlightening, and then to slip in the lies to control things, because the bottom line is maintain this population as a slave population that can be exploited far into the future, and genetic resources can be used, and whatever they're trying to do in the far future apparently works to spill out into the future into something that's horrific, but that benefits the reptilian and the Orion groups. And that's why the Galactic Federation of Worlds is here. That's why they are here. They have taken resources from all over the galaxy that they have control, and they pumped it into this little bitty planet on the periphery of the Milky Way galaxy and said, here it is. We've got to snip this in the bud, because if it gets out into the future, there's no way we can win. That's why they're here. It's a big battle. And it's the only war that matters. So let me get to the beginning. Do you understand where I'm coming from at least? You don't have to take anything that I'm saying as serious or real or even interesting. You can laugh at the whole thing if you want, but at least you've heard it. And some level it will resonate with you. And I think at some level you will understand that there's something in this thing. And so what I really want to say is, after this is over, and we've only got 5 minutes left in this intelligence briefing, you're going to be back out there in the world. You can get right back into the fight. Pro-vaxxer, anti-vaxxer, pro-Trump, anti-Trump, pro-Biden, anti-Biden. 2020 was stolen. 2020 was fair. You can go into the whole thing. You'll be back in the whole thing. Just hear this one thing. No matter what side you're on, the reptilians and the Orions don't give a damn. They don't care what side you're on. They're laughing. They're laughing from the beginning to the end. The only thing they want is for the sides to be pitted against each other and to be fighting and fighting and fighting. Do you realize how easy it would be for them to trigger a global pandemic and then to sit back and watch all the humans struggling at each? It's like going up to an ant nest and taking a stick and putting the stick into the nest and then sort of standing back and looking at all the ants run around. Ants are blind. They don't have any eyes. They can't see that there was a person that took a stick and messed up their nest. All they do is run around trying to say, what happened? And they start trying to put it all back together. We don't want to be a bunch of ants, but that's what they want us to be. A bunch of blind people that can't see what's really going on behind the scenes. And now I don't know if you guys ever watched Johnny Bravo, but he has a funny thing. The coup de grace moment. He mispronounces it. But you know, what are we here for? Why are we here? What are we doing here? Are we just doing this to try to wake up humanity? Are we doing this just to end the prison system that we've talked about at Farsight for so long? Are we just doing this because, selfish reasons? Look, folks, we're here because this was a prison system that was set up a long time ago. We're here because of the galaxy having conflicts for a very long time. We're the result of something that went on in the past. And it can look as if this is the last thing that happens. And sort of fixing this sort of fixes the galaxy's problems going back. That's not correct. In addition to this being sort of the residual leftover of a galaxy-wide holocaust, it's the seed of something that's going to come out. And all the evidence seems to suggest that the Galactic Federation of Worlds has seen that future and doesn't like it. It's really bad, and it's not isolated just on Earth. This is a huge planetary population. This whole project of the Orions and the Reptilians has a genetic sort of factory going on to feed out into all types of things. That will spread. It won't be limited to just this. It will spread. And years into the future, perhaps thousands of years, perhaps 1,000,000 years, but years into the future, what's happening here could spill out into the galaxy and wreck everything. That is what is at stake here, and there's absolutely no reason why the Galactic Federation of Worlds should have put so many resources here into this planet, into this solar system, unless that was the case. If we're small stuff, if we're small potatoes, they wouldn't be here doing that with so many of their resources. They need their resources. They're not strong enough to beat the Orions and Reptilians galaxy-wide. They wouldn't put so many resources here if it wasn't important. And it is important. To you, to me, to everybody, and to the whole galaxy. So never minimize how important you are. So here's the coup de grace thing. If we here at Farsight are actually helping the Galactic Federation of Worlds and their human allies by getting information out, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Are you going to fight the battles that the Reptilians and the Orions want you to fight? Look at those ants. They're just scurrying around fighting each other. Oh, look, that one's on that side. Oh, that one's on that side. Are you going to be that way? Or are you going to see what's really happening? It doesn't matter what you think about the last election, and to be honest, I don't care about the next election. What I care about is everybody fighting so much like the magician, distracting something so that something else can go on. What really needs to happen is for you to look and see the battle that's really going on. If that so-called tic-tac video that I showed you in the beginning of the intelligence briefing is correct, then the US Navy is saying point blank, it's correct. Their crafts, they're flying with technology we don't have. It was a whole fleet of them. And here's what the pilots were saying. They were observed, and not only visually, but on radar and everything else. And then you'll get some mainstream scientists and said, oh, maybe there was a glitch in the stuff. This goes on every single time. The mainstream scientists are conditioned to say, no matter what you see, no matter what you show them, they say, this particular one is a glitch. And they do that to everything. So by saying one is a glitch, they're disregarding tens of thousands of other reports. Are you going to fall for that too? Understand that the Orions and reptilians have a direct interest in making sure that major intellectual leadership just doesn't buy onto this. So the Galactic Federation of Worlds needs your help. They need you to understand what's going on and for you to talk to other people about what's going on. Don't get involved in all of the other fights that the reptilians and the reptilians and the Orions want you to get involved in. Talk about some of the big stuff. And if you say, well, I know, but it's what evidence? I just showed you the evidence of one particular video. And there's tens of thousands of other things. But I can't go through a laundry list of every little thing that that has ever been released. There's tons of books that do that. There's tons of video stuff that's come out. But the very fact that you see the US Navy putting stuff out and then forcing the Defense Department to admit that the stuff is real, they're actual crafts, it's technology that's advanced, and it's not being built by the US, Russia, or China, that should tell you right there that this stuff is real. Okay, other than that, all of our other projects sort of blend back together to pull this stuff out. So I use these intelligence briefings to try to pull things together so you can sort of connect all the dots. This particular intelligence briefing is about the dots that describe this as a war being fought by proxies. And the main thing I wanted to convey to you here is, off planet, it's a shooting war. But here on planet, there's a reason why the Galactic Federation of Worlds isn't openly intervening and sort of just attacking the Orions and the Reptilians. If they did that, the Orions and the Reptilians would respond, and the whole Earth would be would be burned up, and everybody would die. And that what good would anything happen? So the Galactic Federation of Worlds needs us to wake up. They need us to do it. And so they need people like Farsight and you to help other people wake up. The vibration has to be raised. It has to be raised out of the cesspool of anti-vax, pro-vax, anti-Trump, pro-Trump, anti-Biden, pro-Trump Biden. US 2020 was stolen. US 2020 was fair. 24 will be stolen. 24 will be fair. It needs to get out of that. And your whole vibration needs to be raised. If you're being sucked into fear or anger, you're caught and you're a slave. You've got to drop the fear and anger and be calm. That's the bottom line. The Galactic Federation of Worlds wants to help everybody, but they don't want to tell everybody everything that's happening because you would get so depressed. They want you to be calm and then let them do the fighting. But the Reptilians and the Orions can't do anything if you know what they're doing. They can't do anything against you if your vibration is higher and you're looking. That's why we come up with all of our projects. That's why we don't want to just say there's channeling information that we want you to have, because then you have to just believe it, whether you like it or not. What we do is we go out and get the information raw, and then we present it to you and say, make up your own mind. And we love it when the discussion forums, especially the discussion forums on farsightprime.com that are just really, really hot. People are discussing things for tremendously there. We like it when you talk about them. We like it when you engage, because you're raising your own vibration when you're engaged like that. Guys, you're the best. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Farsight, we are actually changing not just the world, but if I am correct with this, then we're changing the future of the whole galaxy. Never underestimate how important you are, how important humanity is, and how important this whole solar system and everything that we do is. This is apparently a really important place, and apparently all the different parties know that. What needs to happen now is for you to know that. You're much more important than you ever thought you were. Guys, you have been really great. I have gone for an hour and a couple minutes. So this is really great. Great turnout today, by the way, as well. So remind yourself, I'm going to take this down. We're going to take this down right away. Tomorrow it will go up in nicely edited form with great audio, nice video, things like that on farsightprime.com. And a 5-minute introductory section will go up on YouTube permanently, so that you can actually, so that people who are not yet on farsightprime.com can see the beginning, know what this is about, and if they want to see that, they can go over to farsightprime.com. Remember, they also have we have a 7-day free trial at farsightprime.com, so you might want to take advantage of that if you haven't already done that. All right, everybody, you have been great. And remember, why am I doing this? Why is everybody at Farsight doing this? We're doing this because of you. Take care, everybody. See you next time.